The idea is a uniquely modern nightmare. A killer who doesn't just take a life, but also steals it, piece by piece. A murderer who ends a stranger's journey and then, with chilling audacity, logs onto the internet and sells their camera, their watch, their backpack to the highest bidder. There was a man who did just this, not in the digital world, but in the real one. And after he was done, he would take their things. Not just for money, but for something far more sinister, to relive his conquests. This is the story of Australia's backpacker killer and the mundane objects that brought a monster to justice. He was a hunter who targeted the most vulnerable prey, young travelers far from home. Two runners orienteering in the Belanglo State Forest, a rugged and remote pine plantation south of Sydney, stumbled upon a concealed, decomposing body. Police arrived and soon found a second body nearby. Dental records confirmed the worst. It was Caroline and Joanne. Then, in October 1993, a local man searching for firewood made another grim discovery. The media exploded. Panic swept through the backpacker community. Belanglo State Forest became a place of national horror. Police launched painstaking searches through the dense, unforgiving wilderness. He found the remains of a young couple who had been missing for years. James Gibson and Deborah Everest, two Australian travelers who had vanished back in 1989. When he saw the news reports about the backpacker murders, a cold dread washed over him. He realized he had met the killer and had, by sheer luck, been the one who got away. In 1990, years before the bodies were discovered, Onions had been backpacking in Australia. The discovery proved that the police were not looking for a one-time killer. The man introduced himself as Bill. At first, he was friendly, but as they drove, Onions felt increasingly uneasy. He told Onions this was a robbery. In a split second of pure terror, Onions realized he was about to be killed. Now, with the discovery of the bodies, Paul Onions' story was the single most important lead the police had. He had even given some items, like a piece of clothing from one of the victims, to his girlfriend. Each object was a reminder of his power, a token from a successful hunt. This collection of mundane camping gear was the final, irrefutable link between Ivan Milat and the 7 bodies in the forest. It was an act of supreme, psychopathic arrogance. The sheer volume of his victim's property found in his home, combined with the powerful eyewitness testimony of Paul Onions, sealed his fate. In 1996, Ivan Milat was found guilty of 7 murders and sentenced to life in prison. He was one of 10 children in a large, insular, and notoriously rough family. To his neighbors, he was a regular guy. This is where the story turns from a hunt for a killer to the chilling confirmation of a trophy collector. By taking and using their property, he wasn't just profiting from their deaths. He was erasing them, subsuming their identities into his own. It was a way of ensuring his victims never truly left him. They became a permanent part of his monstrous collection. Milat had not just killed his victims. He had stolen their lives, piece by piece, and woven them into his own. Ivan Milat was a man who could share a joke with his coworkers in the morning and then hunt human beings in the afternoon. But the police were building a case. They put his house under surveillance. Finally, armed with Paul Onions' positive identification, they raided the property. Hugh was flown back to Australia. He provided a detailed description of the man and his vehicle. The police had a suspect. His name was Ivan Milat. He bolted from the truck and ran for his life down the highway, with the man firing shots after him. He managed to flag down a passing car and escape. He reported the incident to the police at the time. Bill began making strange, unsettling comments. Then he pulled the truck over, claiming there was a problem with the engine. They had a ghost who haunted the Hume Highway, a friendly predator who offered rides to unsuspecting travelers and then led them to their doom. The key to breaking the case, it turned out, was not in the forest, but in the memory of a man halfway around the world in England. A ghost who erases a person and then liquidates their assets on eBay. The bodies had been subjected to a brutal, prolonged, and ritualistic assault. It was clear this was the work of a sadistic and experienced killer. A massive police investigation, codenamed Task Force Air, was launched. But with little evidence to go on, the trail quickly went cold. His profit was psychological. He kept their things as souvenirs of his conquests. In his home, police found a treasure trove of his victim's property. They found the camera belonging to Simone Schmidl. They found the sleeping bag of Gabor Neugebauer. While the specific platform might change. This horrifying concept, the killer who profits from his victim's possessions, who brazenly uses their belongings as trophies, not fiction. For decades, it has been a paradise for backpackers. Young adventurers from all over the world, drawn to its stunning scenery and the promise of a once-in-a-lifetime journey. They travel the highways, hitchhiking from one scenic wonder to the next, full of hope and youthful invincibility. The crime scenes all bore the same horrific signatures. The killer had a clear, ritualistic method. He would incapacitate his victims, bind them, and subject them to a terrifying ordeal before finally killing them. He would offer them a ride, a friendly smile, and then lead them into a private wilderness hell from which they would never return. The stories were all hauntingly similar. A young couple from Germany, a pair of British friends, a lone traveler from Australia, and Joanne Walters in 1992. They had been planning to travel south from Sydney along the Hume Highway. When weeks went by with no contact, a massive search was launched. But in the vastness of the Australian continent, there was no trace. It was as if they had vanished from the face of the earth. They would check out of a hostel, plan to hitchhike to their next destination, and then they would simply vanish. Their worried families back home would call, but the calls would go unanswered. Our story begins in the vast, beautiful, and dangerously remote landscape of Australia. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, these hopeful travelers began to disappear. The first to officially be reported missing were two British backpackers. Carolyn Clark, the mystery took a horrifying turn in September of that year. The crime scene was deeply disturbing. It was not a simple murder. For over a year, the forest kept its secrets. They were hunting a serial killer, who had been using this forest as his personal graveyard for years. Over the next month, they would find 3 more bodies: a German woman, Simone Schmidl, and another German couple, Gabor Neugebauer and Anja Habstead. The police now had 7 victims, but they were no closer to finding the man responsible. His name was Paul Onions. He was hitchhiking on the Hume Highway when a man in a pickup truck offered him a ride. He pulled out a rope and a gun. But with little to go on, the report was filed away and forgotten. Ivan Milat was a road worker who lived a seemingly ordinary life near the Belanglo forest. What they found inside was a house of horrors. It was the physical manifestation of the killer's secret life. He didn't need to sell their belongings on eBay for money. They found tents, cooking equipment, backpacks, and clothing belonging to nearly all the victims. He hadn't hidden these things away. He was actively using them. He was so confident he would never be caught that he surrounded himself with the evidence of his crimes. The trial was a media sensation. Even Milat pleaded not guilty, maintaining his innocence with a cold, smug demeanor. But the evidence was overwhelming. The story of the backpacker killer is a chilling exploration of human duality. It's about how the most monstrous evil can hide behind the most ordinary facade. And his keeping of the victim's belongings reveals the ultimate pathology of a serial killer. It is the final act of possession,